we do need to partner. It takes a village to parent. We are talking about parenting through the ages and stages. And in the chat, to start us off, I just wanted to see what is the best parenting advice you could give, or perhaps it's something that you have received. And we have Jill Factor here, who is an expert. She has 7 kids, 7 grandkids.
7 and 7.
And then just a few minutes ago, I decided to tell Isaac I was going to spotlight him because he's in the thick of it right now with a 2 and 4-year-old, Isaac?
It's 5-year-old and a 20-month-old. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and
yeah.
I have 2, but they're in college. I don't know if that makes it easier or not. Different problems.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jill, do you have any parenting advice, like one best advice, either that you received or you could give?
I think that when my kids were younger, I went to this meeting, this parent meeting, and we listened to a facilitator, and she said, you have 2 baskets, and one is your non-negotiables and the other one is everything else. So you got to decide what are your non-negotiables and keep it really small, such as, okay, my kids can't run in the street. That's a non-negotiable. Or no stealing, or no, I mean, whatever it is in terms of the age. But then everything else you can negotiate on. And I definitely raised my toddlers and my preschoolers with that sort of philosophy. You don't want to wear shoes? No problem. You know, consequences. They'd walk out of the house, they'd be really cold, they'd put shoes back on. And then that way I wasn't constantly like helicoptering and managing my children. I let them figure out things on their own, and then just kept, again, my non-negotiables to just very, very few. It seemed to work for my kids.
Yeah. I like how you said consequences, and that's a big thing now. It's like consequences versus punishment, rather than being so like that you have, like, you're going to get in trouble. It's, well, here's the consequence. If you don't wear your shoes and it's cold out, your feet are going to get cold, rather than if you don't wear your shoes, you're not getting dinner.
Well, yeah, they don't understand that kind of stuff. I don't think little ones understand, but they do understand that sort of immediate, oh, I'm cold, or I'm hungry. People, well, that's dinner. This is your dinner. And, they walk away, but I'm hungry, so they get to regulate, they get to start to understand their own somatic, honestly, sensations to their own bodies in that case.
Yeah.
How about you, Kelly?
I read a thing that, like, you, in order to get power or control, you have to give that power to them in order to receive it. So you can't just dictate and tell them. It's kind of a two-way street. But when I was raising kids, I felt like my whole thing was sleep. I remember just reading books on how to get the kids to sleep. Baby wise, I had to look back. Was a big one that it was about sleeping and then feeding, and not feeding to go to sleep. And then it really changes with my kids are so different. And I think anyone who's been a parent or anyone who has a sibling knows how different you are. And so I think, like, there's not a way I necessarily parent, because it just depended on the child and the situation and the age. But now with my kids as grown-ups, I think the best advice I could give to people, and I hated when people would tell me, was like, oh, time goes so fast. But I think, quality time, there is no such thing. I think all time is quality time, because it goes so quickly. Like, maybe not the first 5 years, or some of those days feel like so long. But I feel like all time is quality time, and it's not just like, okay, I'm gonna have quality time with my family for this half hour. It's, you make it quality. Routine.
I was going to say, I think you brought up a good point, though. One of the best pieces of advice somebody said to me is, or I read, is to treat them all as individuals instead of grouping them together. And being that I did have 7 kids, they all kind of had slightly different rules, which they didn't agree upon, but it made sense based on who they were. There were definitely general rules. Some of my kids chose to go to different schools, even in high school. And they're like, well, what is that child going to a different high school? Well, that fits their certain, the needs of how they learn, versus that child is better like in a public school. This one's better in a charter school. And then I remember one of my daughter decided she didn't want to go to public high school anymore. She wanted to go to online school. And I was like, great. All right, we'll enroll you into online school. She lasted a half a day. And then she went back to high school. And I just let her kind of figure that out. She was old enough to figure it out. I just don't want to spend a lot of time fighting with my kids as they're developing and learning about themselves. And the other thing is I did not let my children go into situations where they're not ready to make decisions. I wasn't very popular in terms of, you can't go to parties. You can't go to parties that could possibly, you'd be exposed to like drinking and, those high school. And I just felt like when they were old enough to make those decisions, then they had permission to do those types of activities. I mean, did they sneak out? Well, I mean, they're older now and they do tell me stories, but those were some of my non-negotiables. Kids are kids.
Yeah. Isaac, how about you? You're like, littles, 5 and 20 months. How do you describe your parenting style and
Oh
what you try to
boy,
do?
my parenting style. I think like for us, it's Jill. You were kind of hinting at kind of that emotional regulation is probably our biggest priority as far as knowing how something if for instance our 5-year-old is angry, being able for her to like express the anger that she's feeling. And then I feel like we've set up very good an environment for them to for her at least, and Griffin too, even though he's 20 months, he knows like 5-6 words. Does definitely, it feels comfortable showing frustration, and especially with Janie, who can speak. She will let us know, I'm feeling sad because blah 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 blah, and then my wife will often say something like, well, where are you feeling that? And she'll be like, my chest or my head or something like that. And then, so just the emotional regulation of seeing an emotion come in, knowing how it feels, and then leaving it, or not leaving it, but seeing how it evaporates, unless you bring it up again. Uh, so I think that's, as far as like parenting style, that's our biggest thing that we try to do. And then, yeah, how you said is just picking your battles. Like, what are your non-negotiables of like, yeah, don't want them running into the streets or, like stuff like that, where if safety is a huge concern, we don't want to say, oh yeah, go right ahead and climb the ladder on the side of the house or something like that, something like that. Yeah.
Well,
And
it
it
sounds
is
like
funny
you
that
and
those,
go ahead.
I say those sounds like, it sounds cliche, but when I was taking my granddaughter to dance class and I said, stay right next to me, I was opening the car door to get her in the car, she starts walking out towards the street. Now she knows better and she's looking at me, and I mean, she's within like a hand's reach. And I was thinking, well, there it is right there. I have to like tell her, and then she's got that like mischievous look in her eye. So
Mhm.
Yeah, where they just
yeah,
are testing the boundaries. Like,
I know.
I wanted to share this quick story. It's just like coming to my brain now, where one morning Janie like just wasn't eating she didn't eat her cereal. It just sat there, and how cereal gets like really mushy. And so I ended up having to pour it down the drain. And I told her, I was like, Janie, it does make me pretty sad that I have to waste this food that you didn't eat, uh, that it's because if the cereal's too soggy, it's really, you don't want to eat that. And she's like, Dad, if if you sit with the sadness, it'll go away eventually or something. She's like, she wasn't even 5 yet. And so I was like, wow, you're really turning this back on me. And then like literally like 3 minutes go down the road and she's like, see, Dad, are you feeling sad anymore? And I was like, I guess I'm not. Like, so I was like, when, yeah, when that really reversed the role there on that.
Yeah. And I think like you kind of touched upon Isaac of how you're talking about Wendy, your spouse, like both you're both with that emotional intelligence
Mhm.
and doing that. And I'm just curious, like how many people, it's hard like you to have parent the same way. And sometimes parents don't live together. They're in different houses or
Mhm.
different states or and even when you are together, sometimes like I just know when my kids would fall, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, and my husband would be like, oh my gosh, you okay? And then they'd start crying. And I'm like, so, and
Yeah.
and it's just
Yeah.
hard sometimes to get on that same page because oftentimes, you know, your parenting style, it's a reaction to every situation. It's like, okay, when they fall,
Yeah.
we're going to do this. When they test their boundaries, this is how we're going to act. So, I was just curious of how people, if anybody's had that experience, and it's got to be even tougher when they're at different houses and rules are different at mom's house versus dad's house.
Yeah, my youngest was 7 when my ex and I separated. So we had different households. And I think it was important for us to come together and support each other on those non-negotiables. And in the beginning, they definitely tried to play one, oh, well, dad does this. It's interesting. Throughout the times, some of these themes prevail. They're just the same. And I think that was important. I will say that Kelly and I were talking about gentle parenting and how gentle parenting is like a new philosophy. I know for me, in terms of watching people raise their children. But like as Isaac said, my granddaughter, who's not even 3, said to her mother, I think you need to take a breath. You seem frustrated. And my daughter was like, well, I am. And, but there is her child. So I think it's a great thing that parents are now, um, what it's like empowering their children to learn about emotions so that they can help regulate and have those conversations with their parents. That is not the way that I was taught as a parent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Me either. And it's also nice as a parent now also to be, it's okay to be like, I need
Yeah.
a break.
Yeah.
And
Oh
it's
yeah.
not like I need a breather. And I know Jill and I talked before this about punishment, and now it's like
Um,
it's consequences, but also I've done it, and I was like, you got to be careful if you do a punishment that you're not punishing yourself. Like, what is that punishment? And if you follow through with it, is the whole house miserable? So that's when I've learned the tough way at times. Like, oh, yeah, maybe we're not going to ground a teenager for the whole week and take away their
right.
phone and just everything. Yeah, it's like we're all miserable. So,
And screen time is a great topic. This also screen time is something that I did not have to really deal with when my kids were little.
mhm.
There was television, there was Barney, but I'm watching my grandchildren and I'm noticing that in the beginning, some of my older grandchildren, they had a lot of screen time. But the younger ones, the ones that are like 18 months, no screen time. And I think that, as human beings, the pendulum will find its way.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, we are a society that moves forward and it does empower children to have the technology as they, you know, if they choose to go into school and to know about computers and to know about cell phones and to know about AI, since that's what they're going to be learning, but how much exposure and how it's affecting the brain. So
Yeah,
parents are definitely dealing with some different topics, but I think the overall probably intention is always good is to keep these children safe
yeah,
and and set them on the right path.
yeah. But stuff with social media, all the
Yeah,
platforms, and
yeah.
before when I like before COVID, when my kids were younger, it was like limit 2 hours screen time a day.
Mm.
And I feel like once COVID, it's like that went out the window because they were learning online. So it's how about Isaac? Do you have little kids with iPad? Like how what does Janie know like iPads? Just,
No, we don't have the only technology we really use with them is the TV, and that's just for movie nights. So we stopped about a while ago. We stopped having have them watch shows because the way shows are always set up is just loads that next one, loads that next one.
Mm.
It just becomes addicting, and we just noticed that she couldn't turn it off. Like we would ask her to turn it off, and it would turn into a huge outburst, like emotional outburst. And ever since we stopped having shows, we've noticed just night and day difference between just like her behavior as far as being able to process emotions. So, and I'm not saying I love the show Bluey. I actually like as a parent, I love that show. That show's awesome. But it just it's either way. It just creates that how YouTube and all those platforms have just load up that next one. And
Mhm.
whereas a movie, we're all together for movie night. It's like a start to finish story. Um, it feels different. I feel like it is different. So yeah, but
That's
we don't have
great.
iPads. We don't have any iPads or anything like that either right now. So
Yeah. I
um,
think like I was going through, like when they were just first coming out, you just don't know what's all going on. And now I think they've been around longer. And so there's more. So people are kind of figuring out what the balance is.
mhm.
I know we're at time, and Jill and I knew we would probably be going over today. We are recording this, so if anyone has to go, you go. But I just want to look at the chat. Emily had a great idea about asking, and this is good even to ask yourself in different situations, like how did you feel before? How do you feel now? And was it as bad as you thought? And that's also, I think that's just a great thing to do as adults too for yourself. So that was in the chat as well. Um,
Hey,
Mhm.
and children, I think the challenging thing is that from the time they're newborns to the time they're launched, they're always changing. And as a parent, I had like one set of, let's say, rules, and then they would have to change since now they're more mature. And now they're, but now I'm parenting adults, and my youngest is 23 and my oldest is 47. Huge shift in terms of I'm still their mom. Um, but I don't really I don't offer advice.
yeah,
If they ask me for advice, that I will for advice. That is another thing that I would always say to my children. Well, what do you think? And honestly, it was sheer exhaustion from answering questions of 7 children. So I just
Yeah.
started saying, "What do you think? Well, what do you think about that?" And then they started answering their own questions. But again, I was just tired.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
That makes sense. Yeah, that
And
makes a lot of
oftentimes
sense.
kids just want to feel validated and heard.
Mhm.
They don't
Yeah.
really like, yeah, I think back to a kid, I never wanted to just hear what my parents were telling me. I didn't want their advice.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is oftentimes just a way for them to release stress and get it off and just feel validated. And I think with my daughter, she's hard, strong headed. And when she was younger, I just told my husband, like, stop trying to lecture her or teach her anything like after 7 p.m. Like just de-escalate.
oh yeah,
Like don't
yes.
don't get into an argument. Like he's strong-headed too. And they would just butt heads. And yeah, it was just I was like awesome. Just watching it would be tiring. So I was like, just de-escalate. You can talk about it tomorrow. But like after 7, she's a monster.
And and Mother's Day being yesterday,
Yeah.
it's like a time to, like, for myself, stop and reflect and think, all right, so what are are the my children's values something that I feel like I have supported, have I instilled? They've all made it, they're all good people, but they're people, they're navigating the worlds. And now that I'm a grandmother, it's even yeah, no advice. Really, it's just sit on my hands and let them now be parents. And
Yes.
again, even if they ask me questions, well, yeah, what do you think? And the reason why is that they're just going to chat GPT anyways, and they're finding all this information. And it might not be the same as when I raised them.
Great.
Like we talked about, Kelly, sleeping together, nursing, bottle feeding, um,
Mhm.
pacify. Like it just continues to evolve and change.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and every kid, I feel like kids are just innately born with a personality,
Oh, yeah.
and parenting is way different for my son versus daughter. Yeah, night and day.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody has any questions or want to add anything, I know we're over time, but this was just an interesting topic, and always good to feel like you're supported in this village of parenting. Nobody, and hope you give yourself grace. Like nobody's a perfect parent, and it's always going to change. And it just, I don't know. I always love having like neighbor friends. I know somebody put that in the chat, and having your kids see like I have hobbies, I have time, and but it's always good to talk through because we all go through different stages at so many different ages. So thank you
Yeah.
for participating today. Thanks for your input,
Thank you.
Isaac.
Thank you, Isaac.
Yeah. Yes. Thanks for sharing my screen and springing it
Yes.
on.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I love it.
it's
John
good.
Kelly, this should be a 10-part series. We'll just go through decades.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't
There we
know. I would need therapy after that. All right. Thank you, everyone. Take
We'll
care.
see you. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.